Welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be a little scary. I decided to take a trip back to my hometown in Minnesota and stay with my family for a while. In this video, I'm going to take you along with me as I explore my mother's new house in an older part of town. It's a two-story brick home with a lot of character and charm, but there's something eerie and unsettling about it that I can't quite put my finger on. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more content like this. Let's get started. I found myself tired of my surrounding and a little homesick. I quickly packed up and made the 2.5-hour drive to my mother's house in Minnesota. The thought of moving back in with my family wasn't very thrilling, but I needed it. So without further hesitation, I adhered to the idea. My mother had recently moved to this new house I've never seen. It was on the edge of town and had more rooms supposedly. I drove through downtown St. Paul and headed into an older part of town. The houses looked like they each had a story to tell. The neighborhood seemed dark and dreary, but it felt like home. My GPS guided me to the front of a two-story brick home with red shutters. A large maple tree in front of the house blocked out any light as the branches stretched out over the roof and hovered over the windows. I took a deep breath, shut off the car, and headed out. This was home. I made my way up the chipped cement stairs, dragging my luggage behind me. I reached for the handle and pushed open the fence. It let out a squeak as it swung open. I walked up to the door and rang the doorbell. I looked around the yard, and it was overgrown with weeds. The grass looked like it hadn't been mowed in weeks. I would have thought the house to be abandoned had it not been for my mother's familiar gardening tools laying about. I heard a familiar voice yell out, "Who is it?" and I replied, "It's me, Mom." She opened the door and let me in. I walked in and my siblings greeted me with excitement in their little eyes. It had been close to a year since I've seen them. We said our hellos, and my mom asked me if I wanted the upstairs bedroom or the downstairs bedroom. I learned that everyone slept upstairs and I quickly chose the downstairs bedroom. I grabbed my stuff and headed downstairs. The room was in the basement. Of course it was a finished basement. Who'd sleep in a dungeon, right? I picked the bigger room. There was already a bed set up, and I dropped my stuff and fell onto the bed and fell asleep. When I finally woke up, it was getting dark. I looked around the room and forgot for a minute where I was. It was cold in the room. My feet were freezing. Then I heard giggling coming from the doorway. A quiet, little giggle. My heart started racing. Everything was dark down here. There was no one here with me. Was I losing my mind and hearing things? I laid still, afraid to move. To breathe. Be quiet. There it was. I wasn't crazy. There was definitely someone outside my door. I grabbed my cell phone and flipped it open, so I had some light. I took a deep breath and sprung out of bed and ran for the wall where the light switch was. I flipped it on and frantically searched the room with my eyes. No one. I looked towards the doorway, and the door was opened ajar. I could see two little shadows outside. I slowly approached the door and reached out for the doorknob. Boom. 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 My heart was beating out of my chest. I swallowed the lump in my throat and swung the door open. Then I saw them. Two little girls crouching behind the door, my little sisters. When the door swung open, I could see the fright in their little eyes. They were both startled and fell back. My God. What are you guys doing sneaking around? I screamed at them. They pointed at each other. One blaming the other. It wasn't me. It was Sarah, yelled Laura. Lies, screamed Sarah. Relieved, I dismissed their shenanigan and asked if they would like to help me unpack. They were very eager, and both jumped at the idea of going through my stuff. Typical kid behavior. The three of us closed the door and started to unpack. I was emptying out a box when Sarah casually asked, "Why do you want to sleep down here alone?" Curious little girl, I thought to myself. Well, because everyone else already sleeps upstairs, and I'm not a baby like you, so I don't need to sleep near my mommy. The girls found my answer to be remarkably funny, and both laughed hysterically. "We're not babies," they both chimed. "This house is haunted, you know." I immediately paused at Laura's statement. It caught me off guard, and my mind was trying to process what I just heard. I felt a shiver and scanned the room. "Laura, why is it haunted?" I asked, afraid of the answer. "Well, there is a man that I see sometimes upstairs. Also, Sarah saw a lady with long hair in the basement once. So we don't sleep down here anymore," she replied sternly. "Yeah, Mom doesn't believe us," added Sarah. I wasn't going to lie. I was engulfed in fear. The girls went on and on about how Sarah had seen the long-haired lady in the basement once and was so scared she got sick. They told me about the old man that wanders from room to room, and even the mother and her son about how they floated through doors and disappeared as soon as they appear. Of course, they say little kids have a wild imagination, but they also say that little kids don't lie. I managed to swallow the fear and finished unpacking. My mom called us up to help with dinner. After dinner and a movie with the kids, I had forgotten about our little conversation earlier. It was late. I was tired. The kids headed off to bed, and I headed downstairs. I called up my friend and spoke to him. We ended up talking for hours, and it helped me forget about the stories. We talked and talked until my eyes grew too heavy. I slid under the covers, shut off the light, and fell asleep. I was only about 2 hours into my sleep when I felt a wind blowing on the right side of my face. Did I forget to close the window? I opened my eyes and looked up at the window. The curtains were still. No wind. The window was closed and locked. I decided I was dreaming, so I closed my eyes and tried to fall asleep again. Tick. 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 I could hear my watch ticking. I squeezed my eyes harder and tried to drown out the ticking. Then I felt it again. That blowing on the side of my face. It must have been a draft, I told myself. Half asleep and eager to sleep, I just pulled the blanket up over my face and went to sleep. It wasn't long before I felt it yet again. Only this time it was accompanied by a foul smell. The smell was nauseating. It smelled like old, rotting meat. I was laying on my left side and could feel that draft on my right side. It was stronger and smelled so bad. Annoyed and curious, I turned around. As I did, I saw a dark shadow hovering above me. I screamed, and I saw it slip under the bed. I was paralyzed with fear. I couldn't move, or I was too afraid to. It was useless screaming for help. No one would hear me. I flipped on the phone, ran to the wall, and turned on the light. I got down on my knees and looked under the bed. Nothing. At this point, I was close to hyperventilating. I crawled back in bed with the lights on, called my friend, and asked him to stay on the phone with me. I told him what I had experienced, and he suggested I was dreaming. After a few hours of reassurance and exploring every logical explanation, he had me convinced I was just dreaming. The next few nights went without incident until a Friday night. I had completed my nightly routine before bed. I brushed my teeth, wore my PJs, and jumped into bed to talk on the phone. My friend and I were talking on the phone until I heard a scratching at my door. My lamp was right next to me this time, and I had light, so I wasn't too scared of my immediate surrounding, but the scratching was coming from outside of my door. I sat in bed as quiet as I could be and had my gaze fixed on the door. Nothing. My friend had me convinced this time that it was a mouse. After all, it is an old house. I'm sure there are some crawling around. We continued with our conversation. It dragged on into the night, and as usual I fell asleep. I was awakened by a cold draft. The room was freezing. I pulled my blanket up to my chin, and as soon as I did, something pulled it back. Again, my heart was racing, and I was paralyzed with fear. I pulled my blanket up as hard as I could and held on tight. I waited for it to pull back. Nothing. Then I felt a quick pull on my feet. Someone's cold hands held onto my toes and pulled. I screamed and pulled my legs up as fast as I could. I flipped on the lights and sat on my bed with tears in my eyes. What the hell just happened? I grabbed my blanket and pillow that night and went upstairs to sleep on the couch. I spent a few nights on the couch until my grandma came over one night and was taking over the couch. I didn't want to say anything to my mom or grandma, and I certainly did not want to spook the kids, so I kept it to myself. That night I headed back downstairs. I was ready this time though. I decided to keep a nightlight plugged in. Feeling a little more safe with my new weapon, the nightlight, I fell asleep. Not long into my sleep, I felt a tickle on my face, kind of like a strand of hair tickling my face. I brushed it out of my way and continued sleeping. I felt it again. Lots of hair brushing against my face with that rotting smell present. Then I remembered. I have short hair. It can't be my hair. I opened my eyes, and there above me I finally put a face to the nightmare that had been haunting me. A rotting corpse it looked like. Her jaw was torn, and she attempted a smile that spread from ear to ear. Her long, black hair dangling in my face. No body. Just the head and torso with dangling arms. She was breathing right in my face. That rotting smell was indeed her flesh. I tried to jump out of bed, but I was stuck. I couldn't move nor scream. I could feel her ice-cold fingers holding down my arms. I was pinned to the bed and paralyzed with fear. She got closer and let out a moan. I felt a heaviness on my chest as she pressed down on me. Her tongue slipped out the side of her face where her jaw was broken. I closed my eyes, and I did the only thing I could have done. I prayed. Dear God, please help me. Please God, rid this room of the evil that dwells here. Please. It was then that I felt the pressure relieve and I was able to move. I opened my eyes, and it was gone. I looked at my arms, and there were red imprints of her hands from holding me down. I slept with a Bible next to me and said a prayer every night after that. It ceased. We moved shortly after that. I don't know who lives there now, but I pity the current tenants. That's it for today's video. Thank you guys for tuning in. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more videos like this.